Hello, today is Wednesday, November 18th, or November 14th, 2018. This is the standard kubeadm office hours. If you could please add your details or questions or comments into the meeting notes, that would be helpful. I'm going top down from the agenda. First up is Lubomir with strict YAML marshaling and strict YAML unmarshaling. What should we do for 113? You want to go through the details?
Yeah, so the past couple of cycles, we had reports that people passed YAML configuration to kubeadm, and some of the fields are bogus, like they have typos in the names, but they pass without any errors or warnings, and we had complaints about it. And what we can do now is, for this release, is to enable warnings. Like if we have duplicate fields or fields that are unknown by the codex. So I tried to make the change in API machinery, which is a lower level change, and it did not it wasn't received well, which was part of my expectation, because the change is going to break like Kubernetes big time. So what I did instead is I added the changes locally to our verification of init config, join config, kubelet, kubeproxy, and cluster configuration. And the feedback I want to get here is like, do we want to enable the warnings, and possibly how to proceed with them? Like, should they be Glock warnings? And that's the question.
I commented on the issue already, and I think it's good for other people to comment too. I think for right now, because we don't want to break anybody who might already have misconfigurations, which is probably a fair number of people, to just output a warning as part of whatever process, whether it be upgrade or init. I kind of think certain workflows should fail, like init, having a strongly typed failure for init. But I think for the time being, just warn on everything is a standard catch-all that is totally fine. And then it'll show up as a large warning in the output for whatever command they're executing. And that way, as when we eventually get the config to GA, we can switch that behavior from a warning to error, or possibly have a flag that allows them to be, have a flag that allows it to be strict. I think warning for now seems fine, and then as we get to GA with config, have a comment and an issue filed, and I think that's probably a good path forwards.
Yeah, we don't want this to be a sharp transition for users, because we might break like whole clusters with this change. Like if anybody has a typo and upgrades and keeps like the old manifest, is gonna still fail. I mean, it's gonna fail this time instead of passing silently. Fabrizio or Ross, do you have comments on this?
Yeah, I think that we can actually we can still display errors for v1 beta 1 and have warnings for v1 alpha 3 and for component configs. So basically, we'll allow for errors in the future configuration and only warn for existing configurations.
Yeah, this makes sense. Like the PR that I'm doing, my problem here is that the PR I'm doing is it's not pretty, because we don't have a good way of doing this. So I'm probably going to update it today or tomorrow, and I'm going to look for more feedback. My initial idea is to enable the warnings for everything and not throw errors at all this cycle. Like this is something that we have to agree upon.
I think that's a reasonable path from my perspective, because that way it gives the user a breadcrumb or a signal that they can key in on, and then as we promote the config to GA, we can eventually tighten up those variables.
What about adding a validate config or config validate subcommand and writing a note in the release note that in the following cycle we are going to enable this?
I mean, I don't want us to add more commands. If we can keep the warning only without adding the subcommand, is much easier for us because we have to maintain another command. That's my problem here. And we have to follow the deprecation cycle for it as well, if we want to remove it.
I think I like the current warn approach, and then we can revisit, to tighten up. Because if we do add subcommands or flags, because we are promoting the tool to GA, we would have to go through policy to do it, and it's just default behavior. It's not going to disrupt anybody right now, which I think is the important part. And then we can always we can find a path forwards in 114 if we open up an issue.
Yeah, I guess we can enable this command later. One problem I have here is that I don't have much time. So code freeze is this Friday, and I have a bunch of docs I need to write. So I'm also handling this PR, and I need to get it like in a minimal viable state. So maybe we can do the command in the next release, unless we super need it right now.
I'm all for for warning and getting it done, and ASAP. My current backlog is actually surprisingly low. I've gone through everything, and there's only like some minor PRs that I see that are currently pending. So nothing is really popping to the top of the radar. So if you do that, just ping me, and Fabrizio will probably get it reviewed and done as soon as possible.
Yeah, I'm gonna need some help probably I'm probably not gonna get it right because the warning is like I had at a point in the agenda about this. Like if we have an error, it's easier to unit test. If it's a warning, I have to do some changes. So yeah, I'm gonna ping people to review it. It's like Tim, what is the deadline for this particular type of PR?
I would classify it as cleanup still. So I think this, because you're not changing behavior, you're not adding net new features. It doesn't really classify as bug fix. It's more like it's more cleanup than anything else. So Friday, it's got to be in by Friday.
Okay.
After this Friday, only critical bug fixes will be able to go in, because I believe, I think we'll have 1 week to actually get bug fixes in, and then after that, only critical bug fixes. So.
Yeah, the code freeze ends on the 28th of November.
Yeah, and next week, just so folks are aware, next week in the US is a holiday for Thursday and Friday, but a lot of US folks take off the whole week, myself included. I will be around to check on things, but I'm technically taking PTO.
Well, it's a good thing that we added Fabrizio as a milestone maintainer, because I'm not sure if Lucas is going to be around as well. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Any other questions about that one? Next up, flag subcommands. Fabrizio, you just put up a PR.
Yes. So I think that the PR adds a new capability. This capability can be used. Is not necessary for the flags for the init commands we are doing, unless we want to add a flag to the add-on phase that let you to choose between kubeadm or core DNS. That is the only difference we have today with respect to the previous alpha phase. Okay, so now we are adding this feature, and that basically will help also leads in the PR for the certificate signing request. But if I understood well, this PR is not making this release.
It's kind of slushy. I would like to get in, but it's not a hard requirement. We have all the stuff ready for it. If we need to punt on it, I think it's okay. So to be honest, I think we could probably, if we're being strict about it, which we probably should be, we should probably punt on both the CSR PR as well as the actual subcommand flag override PR if we're being strict. Now, if we're a little loose with it, we could probably get both of them in. I don't see a problem getting them in. But it depends upon, as a SIG, if we're willing to do this or not. It's a very minor feature, but it's a requested one from the wild. So
currently, my feeling is that we are in a kind of good shape, because all the two chains are finished, completed, and we are not aware of big issues.
Well, we got some minor stuff, but yes, we're not aware.
We got, yes, but let me say business as usual.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this week was a mess for me, and I didn't started yet to do testing, EV testing, and so I don't. So all the tests are green except the upgrade, which is something that we can clean up, but is not mandatory.
My feeling. Oh, sorry.
So my feeling is that we are in good state. So I don't have concern in trying to push in also the CRR change.
My feeling is that the CSR change by itself is pretty low risk. And if it was just that, I would say we should move forward because it's a pretty isolated code path. But refactoring flag management, that's a pretty invasive change. There's going to be edge cases, and those edge cases are sort of, by the nature of flag management, a large feature area to test. So I think if it's all or nothing, then we should go nothing. It's a little late in the cycle to be making changes which completely change execution flow for kubeadm in it.
Sorry, may I ask what do you mean with refactory flags?
I haven't read your PR yet. I'm on a different time zone right now, so I haven't come in yet. But from what it sounded like to me from Tim's requirements, the current way that flags are handled in the phases was not adequate. Tim, does that line up with your understanding?
We already talked this morning. There's basically one user story that's not solved, and that's what Fabrizio's PR solves, is that you want localized flags for different subcommands, different phase subcommands. And his current PR adds that capability. I haven't reviewed it yet because he just sent it 10 minutes ago.
And it is a small change, so I'm not worried about this change.
If it's purely additive, it just like adds a new way to do things. It doesn't change an existing way to do things. I think I'm comfortable with it.
A couple of things I wanted to say about the CSR PR. It's probably better to remove the utilities we want to add to client Go. This wasn't approved, to my understanding, by the people who reviewed it. And also the second thing is that the PR adds something inside a function that no longer exists. We removed a function which is called to run init, and it was part of init.go, and this function no longer exists. To my understanding, it was a workaround, like for the flags in the rebase is going to show what is needed there.
Okay. So it needs a rebase still.
So, Liz, do you think that we can remove the utilities from that are added to client Go in this PR?
Yeah, we can. I put them there because that's where all of the existing code was, and usually when I'm making a change like this, I try to make it as unobtrusive style-wise as possible, but I can just yank that stuff out and move it into our own library, no problem.
Yeah, just so some people from Google removing a similar code the other day, so they don't want such utilities in there.
That makes perfect sense to me. I will get rid of that.
So I think the path forward is, I think Fabrizio, just on first pass swag, Fabrizio's PR seems pretty straightforward. We can review that like immediately after this meeting. And then Liz will have to rebase changes on that. We can review the CSR PR after the rebase because there's a couple other shifts due. And if it's minimal and non-invasive, we accept. If we feel like there's still issues, then we just punt. Does that seem like a reasonable path forwards?
Yes, I also already reviewed Fabrizio's PR and it looks good to me.
Yep, that sounds like a good way forward to me.
All right, next up, deprecate feature flags.
So we are removing some of the former feature flag, and basically we were not in a good starting position because we before we had some flag that was GA, even the underlying feature was not GA, and so on. What the discussion is here is that probably we need to add some warning if people are invoking remove the feature flag according to the policy. I opened an issue a few days ago trying to reading through the new policy, checking what was the current situation in Kubernetes before, and I'm proposing a solution about when and where we have to give a warning for a user that use remove the feature gate. If we can find agreement, this is something that probably we need to have into the release. I hope a small change, but I have to before I want to figure out what exactly I have to do. So if you can have a look at the issue, I linked it in the.
I'm looking at the issue. I'll read the issue in detail. I think what's weird though is that feature gates by definition are not GA'd things. Well, that's not necessarily true. There could be GA'd feature gated items, but those are separate features as they exist wholly inside of Kubernetes. And they're also opt-in behaviors, right? So if they're opt-in behaviors and not the defaults for standard command line flags, I believe there was still even like this weird policy question we had with regards to feature gates with upstream and SIG architecture. So like we had this like nerd fight regarding what does it mean to be a GA'd feature gated thing. It should be defaulted is the answer, and it should have standard command line arguments for the things it needs. Otherwise, by definition, it's not technically a GA'd well distributed thing.
So yeah, the fact is that in kubeadm we are even more complicated, because if I think to the core DNS, just for giving an example, what we were graduating, the kubeadm support for core DNS or core DNS. So what was the feature behind the feature gate?
The feature gate itself was only to enable support. And once it's been defaulted, that is the official GA policy, right? The official support policy gets kicked in. So feature gates by themselves can be deprecated. They don't matter until they're actually enabled by default. I think we can probably make a pretty strong argument there if we need to. And if if somebody else goes to have a question about it, it's weird policy there to say that we'd have long-standing lifecycle support for things that are feature gated, because the lifecycle is question mark. They're not well, you have to opt into that behavior. It's not GA.
Something important here is that the feature gate was already true for a couple of releases, the core DNS feature gate. I think that's the biggest problem here, the core DNS feature gate. It was true for a couple of releases, so we are only including users that have this feature gate to false for some reason.
And we only did that because it was a hack and was convenient.
Yeah, so the question here, like, should we remove the feature gate or should we deprecate it? I was like also participating in the definition of the policies as much as I can, given this particular example that we have with current DNS. But the policy right now is saying, like, if we have a feature that is GA, we have to keep it deprecated for a couple of releases. That's in the document. And which means that also we have to enable the functionality behind it. Like, it was a toggle for us between kubeDNS and core DNS. And somehow, according to the policy, we have to also still keep this functionality, which is not feasible for us anymore.
But in my opinion, the feature is graduated, because now you have the toggle in your config. So the underlying feature is graduating for us. It is beta, and it is beta both the toggle and the core DNS as a component. The problem is that the feature gate was classified as GA. So it is really a weird problem. We can make argument for any position, is just to agree on a common position and then eventually implement a PR for making this happen. Now the issue, the behavior is that those feature gate are basically kubeadm does not accept if you use core DNS flag. That's the current behavior.
I'm actually okay with that, I think, at this point. Given the number of cycles that we've had this stratification. We've had it since 1.11, I think. So that's 3. This will be the second cycle of the release, which technically is the okay time frame to remove things. We should have marked it as deprecated in the beginning, once we promoted it to be the default. But we've been pretty consistent on, denoting that this is the default, and it's in all of our documentation everywhere. I think given the other changes to the config and weighing the priority of what it means to add that behavior back, I would rather just remove it. And if we need to suffer the slings and arrows, they can come at me.
I think that we have the excuse that it has been GA for a couple of releases already. I'm okay with removing it. If you guys want, we can also keep it deprecated for a couple of more releases. But it's not going to serve any functionality behind it. Probably best to remove it, in my opinion.
I think removing it is prudent. And it's also an add-on, right? So like the beauty of the add-on is that if you want to, you can always just, change the manifest because it's a separate step. You can patch apply an updated manifest. So for that particular feature, that's even better, right? Because it's an add-on, you can do it after post stand-up. And there is still an escape hatch for everyone else that wants to set up their clusters.
And it's also in the config now, which is also the better UX. Like you have control of the image as well.
So I think we have a plethora of arguments to just outright remove.
Okay, I will check again, and then basically I think that we are already fine, but I will check again and eventually close the issue.
We might break some users, but again, they should just stop using it.
And we can point them on the happy path. There's 2 happy paths for them to update, and especially as it gets GA, this will be a transition issue. It's a very transitional issue because we actually helped do the upgrade path smoothly to kubeDNS. It's only the small subset of folks who really wanted kubeDNS for some reason for multiple cycles.
Yes.
So again, I think the state space of folks who are in that bucket is really small.
This is one of the many times when I wish we had better numbers on this kind of thing. Like, how great would it be to know who used, like, what feature flags in kubeadm, but nobody's going to sign up to give us that information.
So yesterday I joined the first ever, I think, Kubernetes long-term support meeting, and one of the main topics, like between Tim Pepper and Jordan Legit, was that we need a mechanic to run occasional surveys, and this is something that we can do. And let's say what. By the way, I think the coordinates people already had a survey, so I can ask them if they have some numbers on this. But yeah, a mechanic is definitely needed for this.
So for what it's worth, all this data exists in Sonobuoy.
Do you get like feedback from users? Like, do you collect data in a server somewhere?
So anybody who's supported by Heptio, we collect that data and we know what flags existed because it's part of your config that's uploaded. So we know it. So certain config maps can automatically be. Sonobuoy is very configurable in that you can gather whatever data you want to. It's actually can probably be a little bit too powerful for some people's liking, but if you offer support services on stuff, you can collect whatever data and bind it into the contract. So it's not part of Scanner because we don't want people to be creeped out by that. So like the free services such as Scanner could potentially just have a selective catch on things like the kubeadm config. So if we did, we could have a volunteer clause, obviously, of course, on the front end of Scanner that would basically say, like, we're going to collect whatever knobs you use to configure your cluster, just so that way we have an overall view of how people are using and setting up their environments.
Also, can we extract some numbers for core DNS versus kubeDNS?
I can't right now. I don't have access to that data. I'd have to poke somebody else to get that.
I mean, it's not super urgent, but if we have it, it's better.
I think we should do right by the community on 2 different fronts. One, for the CNCF conformance effort, we can actually tag that data for the next Sonobuoy release as data we would like to collect, and make it a default setting for kubeadm, or for Sonobuoy.
Yes, so as long as everybody agrees.
Right. I wanted to, are there any other last topics that folks want to discuss?
I have one question that I didn't have time to dig into, but it seems to me that there is a growing number of issues and requests in the both in the issue in the kubeadm report and the request in Slack about setting up HA cluster following the instruction on the site. I'm right in saying that this kind of problem are growing, or is just my impression that
I think the instructions are hard to follow. For most folks, there's many steps, and anything that has more than like one of the greatest things of kubeadm is that we've reduced the number of steps to init and join for most folks, so the 2. But I think because we have multiple steps that are involved, it's easy for people to skip a step or to do something custom along the way. I do see, I think more people are using it because we have the instructions out there in front and center. So I don't know if there are more issues being filed. It's hard for me to tell.
Yes,
Chuck,
the background question is that if people are having problem because the procedure is complex, or if there are underlying issue or bug that are surfacing, but I will have a pass on the issue and try to understand, because all these issues are very, very long instruction and very very long story of try this, do that. Really difficult to follow.
Well, that's a sign that our workflow can be improved for HA. People are making mistakes.
Point of order, Tim, it's basically a minimum of 3 steps because the cluster won't boot unless you install CRI in some way.
Is it CRI like a prerequisite already in the docs?
It's a prerequisite to having a running cluster. The cluster will show itself as not ready until you install something like Calico.
So that's a CNI plugin. Yeah, I thought.
Oh, sorry, CNI, not CRI. Too many acronyms. TMA.
Yeah, they miss this step most of the time. I also can confirm that Fabrizio's observation is correct. More people are testing this, and accordingly we get more reports.
How does the CNI stuff relate to the HA? Is that what the issue is about?
Well, they have to install a CNI plugin eventually.
Sure. Is that where we're seeing a lot of the issues coming in?
No, there are all sorts of different issues, and I haven't debugged even the HA setup. So
yeah. So from my noticing, the issues, I've been tracking that page as I tend to pay attention to that page. The complex setup is when we get people to install stacked masters. And I think because the external etcd story is a lot easier and was built first for kubeadm, if we had a similar mechanism for stacked masters and we reduced the number of steps required on that page, I think we would see the issues drop. But I guess it's all speculation really at this point.
Okay.
My
intuition says yes.
I think that so, and last cycle and the next cycle, if we can implement also the shuffling of the file, the automatic shuffling of the file, we will cut down the number of steps to 5, 6. So
yeah, moving files around is very error prone.
I also have to say that I'm not seeing a lot of reports directly related to experimental joint control plane. I'm not seeing people like reporting errors about it, so it probably just works, this particular part. I just wanted to say.
Yeah, the biggest weird set of issues that I see is the custom cert deployments. Right, I have got my own CA, and I want to set up my infrastructure accordingly. That is usually the most common set of problems I see with regards to setting up weird HA deployments and having issues.
I mean, go ahead.
That's just what I see.
So in one of the issues we closed in the features repository, we basically unified all our tracking issues for kubeadm, and we moved them to number 11, which is the oldest one, like graduate kubeadm to GA. One of the issues we had was about upgrades. Was about upgrades, and the story is still not complete, but we do have people actually using it. So I think it's okay for us to claim upgrades being GA, or I mean, we unified everything, so it's kind of confusing.
I think just having the promotion of GA and having at least well-defined subsections of subcommands that are alpha and the config being beta is actually way better than what we've been in the past. So it's very clear to consumers, like any command line options that we have that aren't explicitly marked as alpha or beta are very clear that we support these things. So upgrade is a well-defined command that explicitly states that it is supported. And if we're saying kubeadm is now GA, that means that every behavior that we have an upgrade, we have to follow GA cycles around that.
One weird problem here with the alpha subcommand is that we don't have a beta subcommand, so we directly graduate alpha functionality to GA.
That's fine. I think it's primarily because of history. It was only legacy. The only reason we have that, and I'm okay with that for the time being, because I think in the next cycle we will shuffle, we will do more shuffling and get rid of a lot of the subcommands that are in alpha.
Yeah, probably a better name would have been to, instead of alpha, to use something like EXP experimental or something like that, to avoid confusion with the.
And we can still do that because we can break alpha. So if we want to, we can add experimental as a sub command, right?
Yes, we might want to do this.
If you want to open an issue for that, I'd be okay with that. But I do think, like in the next cycle, as we start to ramp down this cycle, maybe at around the KubeCon-ish timeframe, or right before KubeCon, I think, like maybe the week before KubeCon, we can start talking about 114 cycle. And I do think finishing off the subcommand shuffle, maybe V1 beta 2, depending upon feedback we get, and experimental control plane are probably the most common asked for things that I see.
Yeah, we can revisit all those items next cycle.
Yeah. Are there other things that folks want to talk about? I wanted to go through the current backlog that we had for 113.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I periodically go through the kubeadm backlog and the pending PRs.
Every what's it called? Every end of cycle or near the end of cycle, I like to do a triage of all the other PRs that are upstream, try to close them out, whatnot too. So I just logged a couple of issues this morning, and I know that Liz logged one yesterday. So why don't we talk about the new logged ones before we get into the other stuff? Liz, you logged an API server advertise address not persistent.
Yeah, I just I was testing advertised address as part of a different PR, and I noticed that after kubeadm had been set up, I could not find any evidence that the advertised address had been persisted. I didn't look into it that much. It hasn't bothered anybody until now, so I assume it's not a big issue. I don't know how long it has existed or if it's a regression or anything like that. But, you know,
Well,
it seemed like the sort of thing.
it seems like a regression, but like I know the code, like because of the phases refactoring, this shouldn't happen. Like we write the value in the config directly. Fabrizio can confirm.
Well, in the build that all I know is in the build that I was using, it didn't show up. Like you can see the commands I'm running right here. I don't know if maybe there was something weird about using a link local IP address, if that caused a special case or something.
That might be the case, actually. Did you get any warnings with enabling verbosity?
No, I didn't. Like I said, I didn't dive into this. I just filed it and moved on.
So link local addresses, I think we completely removed support for this, if I'm not wrong. Okay, I'm gonna check this, but ideally, if someone else has the time to investigate the actual bug.
Ruben.
Yeah, what's up?
Can you investigate?
Yeah, sure. Assign me to it.
All right. We just talked about this one this morning. Subcommand behavior. It's on the Slack channel. There's a repro for it. There's issues that exist there. Yeah, we know there's a lot of documentation that needs to be updated for 113. We can probably go through and do an audit of that. There's two separate tracking issues that exist.
I think we should close.
If that already exists, feel free to close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we should close this one because you already have a tracking issue at the website. Like,
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
and I have everything planned already. The changes we have to make are not that many, so I just have to sit down and do it.
We should go through and find detail. Plus, we need to write the upgrade doc again too. So.
Yeah, that's a separate step. I'm talking about like config and phases. I'm gonna do those.
Okay. I think a couple of these need more evidence. Wait a second, my milestone screwed up here. Is this fixed now, Liz? I knew that there was an issue here before in previous versions, but I thought you fixed, there was like a recursive bug in search.
I sent a PR for this, Liz. I'm not sure you saw it. But it's broken. I fixed one bug and more bugs started appearing. So basically, client goal, you need to write the type of the requests of the block. So that's what I did. And I started using a helper function for this from client goal. You can see this in my PR. It's linked at the bottom. But ideally, at least you have to look at my PR. It doesn't work.
Okay. All right, I will look at that after this meeting.
I have a question. Like, what is use API in this case? I don't even know.
We can probably take that particular question offline, and you and Liz can take a look at that. I want to make sure we go through the rest of the backlog here, so at least triaged, and we have everybody assigned that's working on it. Calico pod subnet cider docs for kubeadm installing and updating. I can do that. This is the FeatureGate one. Whoever's typing, can you mute? Disabling core DNS FeatureGate does not disable a post-upgrade task. This should no longer exist if you're going to remove it, right, Fabrizio?
I think that now everything about. No, I have to check it. Probably it is removed, but let's give a.
We have I just realized that we have a bunch of documentation that we have to change if we remove coordinates, the gate, the cycle.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. There's extra documentation that there's some documentation that we need to update. There's not a ton. I think I put a block on a couple of PRs where people wanted to add here's how you do things in the backwards way. And I said that didn't make any sense.
So I literally would delay the removal of the coordinates gate because I don't have time to update all the docs. But if you remove it, okay.
I can walk through the docs too. I'm gonna start to add that to my list because I have other docs PRs I got to do. I'm actually surprisingly gonna have more time now. Less meetings, yay.
So in terms of upgrades, we now don't have a feature gate that controls the upgrade as well. Like this does not break us in any way?
1 second. What are you talking about?
So when you apply upgrades, you still have an option to.
Oh, feature gates will be ignored on upgrade if that's what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, feature gates will be ignored. Anything that doesn't actually parse properly should be ignored.
I think it's going to throw an error because we are. Actually, no. It's still going to respect the feature gate flag, but not the coordinates value of the flag.
No, yes. If you are upgrading from 112 and you have config in v1 alpha 3, config will be converted, and so you will get or kubeadm or coreDNS according to your feature gate. It is converted without problem.
Okay.
Liz, they're already working on that. This is the DNS name.
Yeah, I started that yesterday afternoon.
I think I've already triaged. Go ahead.
For that one, I think we can ping the reporter because we couldn't reproduce that one. So. No, yeah.
I'm going to take out a milestone then. So what I typically do if you don't have valid reproducers after a period of time, this has been a long time too. 13 days ago, I will see if I can reproduce it. Well, we'll leave it. So if it goes past like a 25 to 30 day cycle without a valid reproducer, I just straight up close typically. People can reopen with a full spec, but I punted out a cycle. This one's still pending. I don't think this really needs to get done this cycle unless it's already done. It says life cycle active. This is closed. Is this done? Fabrizio?
If I remember well, yes. Check the PR link below.
It's merged.
So we can close it.
Auto detect CRI, I'm going to punt that. That's not getting in now. I saw the PRs that are there, but there's a couple of other issues too. I do think that we'd want to get this type of behavior in for 114. We also need better test coverage. Kubernetes API server ignores. Folks are already working on that. What are we going to do with this one? It's been broken for a while.
But I think that we can close it because we define the path forward. So now dynamic kubelet is removed, and it is only accessible via alpha command. So
No one has assigned this one.
I think I remember this one. So it's not setting the service seeder inside the config map of the DNS add-on. I think he made a valid point about this problem.
yeah, but the problem with core DNS is that they don't have a they are not using component config. They have their own.
Yeah, it's pretty bad with the core file.
So he probably made an argument, but it's really tricky to manage core DNS.
They have to move to some sort of a structured config that we can understand.
I already punted. We're too late in the cycle for anything of that nature. Improve validation of fields configuration objects. This is your PR currently. So this is active.
Maybe I have a couple of issues logged for this.
I think this is the.
Because there's another one. I think I have a couple of issues logged for the same thing. I have to close one of them.
Right, but this is.
Oh, okay. Let's leave this one. It's active, yes.
And it's actually not either of us. Punt. This is.
We've been dragging this from 1.11.
There's some things we've done. There's some other things that we have not done.
But this is, if I remember well, it is mostly related to the auto detection of CRI.
There were so many different aspects of reset that didn't work right. It's not idempotent on a number of different fronts. There's IP tables rules, and we have like a basically instructions now. The other CRI cleanup issue is definitely. So I'm okay with closing this one because we have a separate issue for the CRI, and we have instructions on how to clean up the proxy goo that's left over.
Yes, +1 for closing this.
I just checked the idempotency problem was already fixed on 1PR. So
this particular one is definitely gonna have to go to 114. We need test coverage for HA configurations and a bunch of other configurations. Liz started a test suite. We need to, once we actually have an HA deployment tool in place, whether that be kubespray or the AWS provider for cluster API. Either A or B, we need to enable that test suite as part of stand-up and the standard periodic jobs that we track.
Yeah, it needs a lot of discussion too. I was thinking like maybe the correct route is to start writing a kubetest deployer for cluster API directly. But that's another topic.
Yeah. Improvements to kubeadm upgrade for 112.
So the last one, are we targeting then 114 for when we can actually activate that and put it in our CI?
Yes.
Okay.
kubeadm upgrade diff loses configuration options. You already have stuff partially there. It's okay if that one punts. This is a bug and a feature to make it change. Improvements to kubeadm upgrade for 112. We're getting near the end of time here. I think we should close this one. We already have a bunch of these already done.
So the upgraded CD part, is it already covered?
We have the scenario in place for deploying and managing your etcd. I don't know about if we actually, I do believe you can do it via the phase, but we should document it. Hold on. I'm going to add my, you already have enough docs. I'll add this to Chuck. Myself, I'm going to take you off because you got enough to do.
I mean, we can also close this one and have a separate issue because that it's okay like that. Okay.
Yes, but I think that if the TCD admin project ramps up, we have to somehow get out from the TCD management.
Well, we import.
Yes, we import. So
yes. That's. But we should still. Yeah, we should still definitely have the upgrade instructions for external etcd management updated and verified.
Yes, but at that time you can eventually split the TCD, the upgrade of the control plane from the upgrade of the TCD, which is also safer in terms of risk.
Yeah. Can I just close this one? No, Fabrizio? This one's like merge-itis-osis.
Only docs.
I'll have to. We have the other trackers. I don't think we need to leave this open for these two.
So the last item, I ask people to have a look at this, the last PR, and we can pretty much close this. I already have the command to close this issue from the PR, I think.
I'll just close it now.
Yeah. This was an issue that the release team was tracking, by the way.
Okay, so this last one we already talked about, and this one needs upgraded deployment configuration instructions. I totally forgot about this one. It's been fixed, so we just need to update it. That's what I'm going to do today. All right, so we're down to 20 actual issues. They don't need to.
Wow, that's the best since I joined this SIG.
We actually have like a week plus to solve all these too, so we have some time. We are over time by 1 minute, so I'm going to call it now. If there are any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, let's take them in the notes or on Slack. And thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.